So this time of year, there are a ton of LinkedIn posts and Medium posts and Reddit posts about the trends and predictions for the coming year. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But we thought it'd be fun to put together our own conversation around what's going to be important in 2026. But before we do that, we wanted to kind of have a little bit of fun and take a look in the rear view mirror and have a little honesty about predictions that we've looked at the past that maybe we really bought into and didn't necessarily pan out. So we're going to talk about that with our first cup panel and with you this morning. But first, let's meet our first cup panel. So rumor has it, this guy in the studio with me, if you fold his head back, there is candy in there. Welcome, Jason Rhoades. He is the Chief Innovation Officer at Meaningful AI. And next up, this guy is so networked, his dog has a Calendly. Welcome back, Nandu Shah, President of the Atlanta CTO Club. And next up, all he wants for Christmas is more trade show swag. Welcome the product management troubadour himself and the CEO of Product Growth Leaders, Steve Johnson. Welcome back, Steve. And next, we've got a big first cup panel this week, and this one treats innovation like a contact sport and mentoring like a championship season. Let's hear it for Brian Huss, VP of Product Management at Prize Picks. Welcome back, Brian. Good to see you. And last but not least, he left a band known for, let's call it energetic branding, and brought that creativity to AI. Here is Misha Sulpovar. He's the Senior Vice President and Head of AI at Cherry and author of the AI Executive's Handbook. Welcome, Misha. And I am Jason Brett. I'm your host. If the takes get too hot, remember you logged in voluntarily. Okay, so let's get to it. I want to just jump right into the panel, and we are going to start off just in the same order that I introduced everybody. So I'm going to pivot over to Jason here sitting in the studio with me. Jason, what's a big hyped trend or idea or you got to know this idea that came up in the past that you fell for hook, line, and sinker and look back and said that was really not all that important?
Well, in the past, we were talking about Yoda.
Yeah.
I think the Star Wars prequels, there was a lot of hype around them. They were terrible. No, I mean, I'm an early adopter to a lot of technologies. I buy into most hype and trends. But the last one I was really hyped about that just totally let me down, I think, was VR and augmented reality.
Yeah.
Just the hardware was not ready for the idea. And as we saw, the metaverse fell flat. No one was really interested in it outside of gaming and maybe some training. So that was the last one that I really remember buying into. And I'm just like, move on.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I got excited about that one too. I'm still like holding out hope that we'll get something valuable at some point, but you're right. It's like it's not there.
Yeah, we're years away.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That's a good one. That's a really good one. Let's switch over to Nandu. Good morning, Nandu. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm great. I want to point out that in the past you said you had no one to introduce you, but today you got an introduction. So congratulations.
That is true. Thank you. Came up with something a little bit more creative.
So I've been hearing for decades that some new innovation is going to make it possible for non-software developers to code. Automatic programming, 5th generation languages, visual programming. I got a demo from a vendor back in like 2008 where they're like, yeah, use this tool and your business analysts can develop your enterprise application for you and you don't need your engineering team anymore. And I've been let down every time.
Yep. I've been trying to take advantage of so many of those because I'm really lazy and don't want to learn to code properly anymore. Good one. All right, let's jump over to Steve. I don't have any swag for you.
Well, let me just start with that and then, when I first became a vendor, we would go to trade shows and hand out all sorts of swag. And I kept thinking, why are we doing this? And everybody was wild about it. And I'm like, this is trick or treating. I mean, everybody goes to the booth to see what stuff you have so they can fill their kid's stocking 2 months later, but it never turns into revenue. So anyway, I ranted on that the other day, which is why you brought it up. But I think that is one of the big things that always bothered me was, everybody's like so crazy about this stuff, but it's not effective in any way. But for that matter, some other day I'll go into a full rant on how much I hate trade shows.
Okay. I will hold space for that.
Yeah, but I'll hold a space for that. The other one, I'll say the big disappointment for me is I was an early adopter of Agile as a concept and was training people back Agile Manifesto days in how to work collaborative with development. I really thought that Scrum was going to be the thing. And I've been hugely disappointed by that. They introduced a new role of product owner, which was developers' view of what product management should have been doing. They basically said, let's do waterfall for 2 weeks and see how it's going. And, despite all the hype and excitement, even for me, it was like we never got the results that we hoped we were going to get. And when I started doing my own consulting business, I interviewed 100 VPs of product. 50% of them said that Scrum had been a disaster for them. The other 50% said that it had actually worked out pretty well, except they were not doing Scrum. They were doing Scrum, but, it's like, we're doing Scrum, but we're not doing 2-week sprints, or we're doing Scrum, but we're not doing user stories, or, whatever. So I'll say that's of the hype of the last 20 years. That's the one that sticks to my mind the most.
I remember the first product camps, half the agenda was topics of understanding Scrum or understanding how to be a product manager in an Agile world, being an Agile product manager, and what is Agile. It was a huge deal. And that was just 16, 17 years ago. And it is, I think I still hear those questions. It's not necessarily Scrum. Maybe Scrum is still there, but yeah, that's a really good call out. I have wondered
as Daniel points out, we're doing the same thing right now with AI.
Yeah.
Every topic, everywhere, all the time, AI. And I think that's a hype cycle that's getting ready to, it's clearly a hype cycle that's in the trough of disillusion, at least for me.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. Good call out. Let's pivot over to Brian Huss. How are you, Brian? Welcome back. What is something that you bought into that just didn't pan out?
I'll give you a couple. I'll plus one on Jason's real quick on the VR stuff. Y'all remember Magic Leap? They raised like roughly like $1 bajillion in this like mixed reality device where you could still see what was in front of you, but there was stuff in your environment too. And they did this like amazing game with Peter Jackson's studio. And it was like, wow, this technology is cool. And you can see how they raised so much money because wow, could they do some decks? They would point you visions of, people in boxes at games, like all wearing headsets. And you'd be like, for the first 5 minutes, you're thinking this technology is amazing. And then minute 6, you're like, why do I have this giant thing on my head? Make it stop now. And I mean, is there, there's got to be something. I mean, there's something in the core of that idea, maybe where they're going with the glasses or something later, but like just as it was, it wasn't all it was hyped to be. But the other one I was going to dig into is, so I've got a like digital copy of like a weirdo cartoon monkey that I'm going to sell you for $2 billion. NFTs, really? Whoa. Like there was speaking of like big fundraising, there's another company out there called So Rare that basically created these like basically NFTs of various like soccer players, and you build a fantasy game out of them and burn through a lot of cash. We did something very similar when I was at Turner. We did this like basically you could get NFTs of these fictional golfers that you'd play games with. And again, there's something at the core of the idea. Obviously, with where crypto's gone, like blockchain's real, that technology is real, but are you going to use it to make these things? Is this, classic example of maybe just because you can doesn't mean you should.
And I can't believe I have already blacked out NFTs from my memory. All right. Thank you, Brian. Misha, what got you? What hooked you?
Yeah, so I think I'm still hooked. So for me, it's machine learning and data science, and I'll tell you why. I think there's so much potential and goodness that comes from that, and it sort of has gotten clumped together with generative AI, and it's going to ride, for better or for worse, I think, that hype cycle. And you have these now adoption figures that are in the 90% on AI, but if you double click into it, adoption for machine learning and data science is still in the low 30s. So I'm not losing hope yet, but I think there's so much value in being able to understand your business, understand your customers, and understand where you're going through those processes that might get left behind because it gets clumped together as companies try to figure it out. And I was expecting it to be easier to do machine learning by now,
Yeah,
and it's still a pain in the butt.
I can see that. I think for a lot of us, it does still feel very mysterious. I know Drew has come on quite a few times and spoken about that. Nandu, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just had two responses. When Brian was talking, I remember, just like you, I'd forgotten about NFTs. But another one that I'd forgotten about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, 3D TV was going to be like the biggest thing. And I had friends who bought TVs and they had their glasses like, are you actually going to sit there and watch TV that way? And then no one did.
Mm-hmm.
But to Misha's point about machine learning, I'm with you. I still hold out hope. AI has, here's a bit of a hot take, but I don't think this is very debatable. AI has always been a marketing term. It means lots of different things. Right now, it means Gen AI and large language models. But the term machine learning was invented when investment dried up for AI in the late 80s. And people working on the really interesting stuff needed a new name that would get funded, and they called it machine learning. And there's real, there's more concrete stuff happening with machine learning, and always has been, than with the more general AI stuff. So I'm with you in holding out hope for that one.
And I remember similarly at IBM, the rebrand of AI at IBM for a little while was cognitive computing. Yeah, that was, and there were tests that you would meet to say, this is a cognitive application if it meets these 5 criteria. And that was how you got funded, was having a cognitive computing use case. Elaine, welcome back. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Doing great. Great to see you.
Jason and everyone. Daniel, good to see you. It's been a while.
So tell everybody who you
how's it
are and
going?
what you're up to, and did something capture your attention, some hot tech trend or must learn that you went into and said, that was kind of a waste of time?
Yeah. So currently I'm still in a product role. Stratfield Consulting. Client is a big local Atlanta restaurant chain. That's going very well. And for, I guess, answer to your question, I don't know if everybody remembers, a lot of companies were trying to get into making their own phones, their own hardware. So like Facebook, back before it was Meta, had a Facebook, trying to make a Facebook phone. I think Amazon even was trying to make the Fire phone. Yeah. So just a lot of companies that I guess originally weren't into hardware trying to expand into their own in-house hardware company. And there was a hype, there were commercials about it, and then it had a slow and quiet death, because I guess hardware is very hard to get right. And maybe it would have been, in an alternate world, multiple hardware channels exist, but clearly that's not the case anymore. And then every time you'll see, I'll see an interview or an article about so-and-so tired of the duopoly creating their own phone for people that are unique, blah, 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 and it's, well, you don't really see any of that, at least stateside, maybe.
They didn't really learn their lessons either. They're all doing the same thing again with chips, right?
With chips, yeah. I think I remember one interview of a video of someone, they had made a phone. It was like phones for not square people, and it was like, it looked like a sphere, and it was just the sphere you held and you talked onto, and it's like, I don't know.
I don't remember that one. But when you said that,
I don't think it was a parody video either. So, but
yeah,
maybe they've moved on to other things.
That's a great call out. And I know Brian commented that he had dealt with one at ESPN. ESPN did a phone as well. That's a great callback. I want to give a shout out to Nandu, who is our 1,000th YouTube subscriber. So thank you, Nandu. You pushed us over the top. I got one for you before we switch over to our main topic. I don't know if anybody remembers this. It was late 90s, the Q Cat. Does anybody remember the Q Cat? It is actually It is actually lauded as the worst product ever released. It was a little barcode scanner that looked like a cat, that you could scan barcodes in magazines from and go directly to products on the nascent internet.
Our first QR code scanner?
Yes, except it was barcodes.
Oh.
But yes, the QCat. Go look it up. Yep, that's it, Wes. I had actually a half a dozen of them because I worked at a computer retailer at the time, and we had plenty of sample equipment to try out and test out and share with our friends. And yeah, that was pretty ridiculous. But I was excited about it. All right, let's switch over though. So this has been a little bit of a fun walk down memory lane. And I think what we're trying to do today is set ourselves up for a repeat in a few months, as well as hopefully a little bit of lessons learned from the past will drive us into a better space, into a better prediction algorithm. At least there's a lot of noise out there about predictions for the next year, what you must have in your tool belt in order to be successful, whether it be your product organization, your team structure, or the technology that you're adopting, the company that you're using. But we decided it'd be fun to build kind of our own community-built view of what actually is going to matter in 2026. We're out there in the trenches. We're looking at job postings, the things that people are hiring for. We're looking at the requirements that we're prioritizing on our roadmaps for 2026 and so on and so forth. And our OKRs for next year are in development right now. So we wanted to get into it and try to skip the hype cycle itself, but get an honest look at the trends and the opportunities and the shifts that deserve our attention. And together we're going to map it out. And we're going to map where the real value is hiding and where the distractions live too. So we're going to continue with our first cut panel. They're all going to stay over here and be a part of this as well. And I have just dropped a Miro board into the chat, and I'm going to share that on my screen as well. The first thing I want to do, and I want to do this as a collaborative exercise because, once again, just getting as many people's perspectives in here as possible is ideal. What I'd like to start with is I'm going to give us a few minutes to just look at this first portion of the Miro board, and there is a technologies and trends section here. And I'm going to challenge each of you to drop a few notes in here and in each of the sections under these different topics. So we've got AI and agents in product work. And these are trends and technologies that you're watching for 2026 that you think are going to be really important. I've also got a couple of little prompts here beside each of these blocks. We've got go-to-market and growth. What are you thinking about from a go-to-market standpoint? New must-have channels, must-approach channels or techniques to getting your value proposition out in front of customers. Product craft and organizational design. This is the big topic of what are the tools and techniques and new ways of thinking about delivering great product that are going to be really important for us in 2026. And finally, just in the topic of platforms and boring infrastructure, the stuff that's less sexy but still really important for enabling the business and the product suite in general. Would love that. We're going to just take a few minutes and get everybody to drop some ideas in here. And then we'll come back in a few minutes and figure out which ones deserve the most attention. And I'm going to set a timer here. And we're going to give it probably about 5 minutes.